We were 30 minutes from the Vermont border when my husband said the words that stopped everything. Pull over. Right now. I thought he was joking. His voice wasn't loud, but it carried something underneath: urgency, maybe even fear. I glanced over, one hand on the wheel, waiting for the punchline. It didn't come. Please, Sarah. Just turn off this road. We were headed to a family weekend at Lake Willoughby, something my parents organized every August. Cottage rental, board games, group hikes, and a ridiculous amount of grilled food. I'd made pasta salad at 6 a.m. The kids were half asleep in the back seat with juice boxes and headphones. We were on I-91. The next turnoff came up fast. I took it. As soon as we left the interstate, his whole body seemed to decompress. Shoulders down. Breath deeper. Like whatever had been chasing him had missed. I didn't speak at first. Just drove through the narrow access road, surrounded by trees and the hum of tires on old pavement. Want to tell me what's going on? I finally asked. He didn't look at me. I need to check the trunk. He stepped out without another word. I watched in the rear view as he opened the back. I couldn't see what he was doing, just his stillness. The kind of stillness that says, I'm confirming what I already feared. He waved me over. When I joined him, he didn't speak. Just lifted the lid on a soft blue duffel I hadn't packed. It was the one my mother handed me just before we left. Wouldn't fit in our car, she said. Just some extra stuff for the lake. Inside, beneath a folded sweatshirt and a pair of flip-flops, was a toiletry bag. Bright green. My youngest would have loved the color. My husband unzipped it halfway and peeled back the top. I don't know what I expected. Maybe medicine. Something boring. But what I saw instead were plastic-wrapped packets. Several. Slipped between socks like insulation. Not hidden, just buried. They weren't vitamins. I stepped back. Felt the gravel shift under my sneakers like it was the only thing still honest. They gave us this, I said quietly. He nodded. With the kids in the car. Another nod. We didn't say much after that. We didn't need to. I walked back to the driver's seat. Sat there for a full minute, hand still on the wheel. Then I turned us around. We drove aimlessly for over an hour, me on autopilot, him watching the phone as it lit up again and again, like a broken alarm clock. We didn't answer. By the time we pulled into their driveway, the afternoon sun had turned hard and hot. No one was home. I used the key hidden under the fake pine cone to open the front door. The bag went just inside the entryway. Still zipped. He locked the door behind us. We didn't say anything until we were halfway home. Then he whispered. They knew exactly what they were doing. And I whispered back, so do we. The next morning the phone rang 6 times before I finally turned it off for good. Voicemails flooded in. My mother's voice sounded strained at first, then sugary, then clipped. We're just confused. Call us. Then, we're getting worried. Then, you're being dramatic. I didn't respond to any of them. Neither did my husband, Josh. We spent the morning like normal people. Made coffee. Unloaded the dishwasher. Pretended we weren't reeling. It wasn't just what they tried to do. It was how calm they were while doing it. Josh said it best over breakfast. They weren't counting on us to find it. They were counting on us to not look. And they were right. I almost didn't. The bag had been light. My mom smiled when she handed it over, already turning to wave goodbye like we were just late to a picnic. It wasn't until Josh said, turn around, that any part of me had considered we were being used. Used. That word clanged in my skull like a dropped wrench. They didn't ask us to help. They didn't explain. They didn't trust us. They just planted it. And what if we hadn't stopped? What if we'd crossed that border with our 3 kids in the back seat and a duffel full of controlled substances in the trunk? How long would it have taken before we stopped being a family and started being a headline? I opened my laptop and typed 3 words into Google. Federal smuggling penalties. The results made my stomach twist. 20 years. Asset seizure. Child Protective Services. I closed the laptop again. Josh stood by the window watching the front yard like he expected someone to pull in and knock. They'll show up, he said. They're not done. I nodded. Of course they weren't. That night, after the kids were asleep and the house was still, I wrote a letter. Not to them. To myself. Just to put it all somewhere. It said, You are not paranoid. You are not cruel. You are not overreacting. You were almost framed by the people who raised you. I folded it and placed it inside the top drawer of my nightstand, right next to my passport. The doorbell rang at 7:46 the next morning. Josh was already dressed. He met me at the stairs. "Don't answer it," he said. We watched from the upstairs landing. Through the curtain I saw them, my parents. My father in that awful beige windbreaker he always wore when he wanted to seem harmless. My mother clutching a pie dish like this was some sort of visit. They didn't knock again. Just stood there for a minute, then walked back to their car. The pie stayed on the porch. When they were gone, I opened the front door just enough to pick it up. Inside was a folded index card. "Let's not blow this out of proportion. We're family. Love, Mom." I threw the pie in the trash. Card included. They weren't sorry. They were negotiating. 3 days passed. Then 5. Then a full week. No more phone calls, no unexpected visits. The silence felt strategic, like they were giving us time to cool off, to return to being the people they could manipulate. But we weren't cooling off. We were getting sharper. Josh started making lists. Quietly, methodically. Things we needed to change: legal documents, emergency contacts, insurance policies. "They have access to too much," he said one night, tapping his pen against the table. "They've known your social security number since you were born. They know your mother's maiden name. They could guess your bank passwords." He wasn't wrong. They could. The scary part wasn't that they had crossed a line. It was realizing how long they'd been circling it. I spent an entire afternoon just walking through the house, looking at every framed picture, every gift they'd given over the years. All of it suddenly felt suspect. The blender they bought us for our wedding, the monogram throw blanket from Christmas, the key holder they insisted on mounting, so the kids don't lose anything important. That key holder held our spare house key. I took it down and changed the locks the next morning. That same day, a letter came in the mail. Handwritten envelope. No return address. My maiden name in perfect cursive. Inside was a folded piece of paper. One line. "You've made this much harder than it needed to be." No greeting. No signature. Josh took it from me without a word, scanned it once, and slid it into a file folder labeled Evidence. It was sitting next to a printed spreadsheet he'd started. Every contact with them since the duffel bag incident. Dates, times, what was said, and how. "I don't know what they're capable of," he said. "But I don't want to find out unprepared." I nodded. I was starting to think the same way. That night, I got a text from my sister, Megan. "Mom says you're having some kind of breakdown. Do you need to talk?" I stared at the message for a long time, then typed out a single sentence and deleted it before hitting send. Instead, I just replied, "I'm fine. Thanks for checking in," and blocked her number. Because this wasn't a misunderstanding. This wasn't a rough patch or a family fight or a misread gesture. This was something else. Something careful. Something planned. And I wasn't going to be their soft place to land anymore. It was Josh who suggested we talk to someone outside the family, someone professional. "Not the police," he said. "Not yet. But someone who knows how these things work." We started with Ben Carroll, our accountant of the last 8 years. Ben was in his late 40s, ex-military, wore short sleeves even in January, and never sugar-coated anything. I made the appointment under the pretense of tax planning. We brought 2 thick folders with us: bank statements, credit card printouts, login records, the pie note, the duffel bag photos, everything we had. Ben sat there flipping through the pages, occasionally pausing to scribble something into his legal pad. After a while, he leaned back and folded his arms. "You're telling me," he said slowly, "your parents gave you a duffel bag that contained what looks like distribution-grade narcotics, and said nothing?" Josh nodded. "And this wasn't a mistake?" I shook my head. "They've been struggling financially for a long time. They asked us for money a few months back, for my nephew's tuition. We said no. Then suddenly everything was fine again. Too fine." Ben tapped the folder. "And now they're trying to bring you back into the circle. Or at least make you complicit." "That's how it feels," I said. Ben let out a slow breath. "This is serious. The fact that you returned the bag and haven't contacted law enforcement yet might actually play in your favor. But you need a paper trail. You need documentation. He scribbled an address onto a sticky note. Talk to Elaine Turner. She's a former federal prosecutor, now private counsel. Works with people caught in, let's say, gray zones. Tell her I sent you. I nodded. Josh took the sticky note like it was radioactive. On the way home we didn't speak much. But when we got home I did something that surprised even myself. I took down the framed family photo that hung above the stairs. The one from Thanksgiving 3 years ago. Everyone smiling in matching sweaters my mother had insisted we all wear. I turned it over and slid it face down into the hallway closet. No more pretending. We weren't a family anymore. We were a liability. Elaine Turner didn't offer small talk. She met us at her office in Burlington, a glass-walled building that felt more like a startup incubator than a law firm. Her assistant led us into a meeting room with a long table and a carafe of untouched water. Elaine walked in a minute later, all gray blazer and narrowed eyes. I've read Ben's summary, she said, dropping a file onto the table. Tell me everything. Start from the beginning. So we did. The reunion, the duffel, the drugs, the silent return. The letter. The pie. When we finished, she leaned back and folded her arms. You're lucky, she said flatly. Josh's eyebrows lifted. Lucky. Lucky you stopped. Lucky you looked. Lucky your husband trusts his gut. If you'd been stopped at the border with that in your car, and no plausible deniability, your kids would have been taken into protective custody. Minimum. Possibly felony charges. I felt my stomach roll. She was stating it like fact, not as a scare tactic. Elaine pulled out a legal pad. First, we're going to draft a statement. Not for the police. Not yet. But it goes on file. Affidavit. Detailed, time-stamped. Second, you stop communicating with them. No calls, no texts, no cousins mediating on their behalf. Zero contact. I nodded. And third, we hire someone to look at their finances. See who else they're roping in. If they're moving product, they're not doing it alone. Josh leaned forward. You think this goes beyond us? Elaine didn't answer right away. She opened the folder Ben had given her and slid a page across the table. This is a property deed your father signed 2 months ago. Transferred partial ownership of their house to a holding company in Delaware. That company doesn't exist on paper. Not unless you know where to look. I stared at it. She tapped the page. This isn't just desperation. This is infrastructure. And if they're using you, they're using someone else too. Josh sat back. Jesus. Elaine's eyes didn't soften. You've been the good daughter for a long time, Sarah. But right now being good won't protect you. Being smart will. We left with a manila envelope of instructions, 3 pages of notes, and her direct cell number. That night I couldn't sleep. I sat in the hallway outside the kids' rooms, just listening to their quiet, even breathing, wondering how close I'd come to losing it all. And quietly I began to hate the people who put me in that position. The next envelope came without postage, left at our front door overnight. Plain white, no handwriting, sealed with tape. I didn't want to open it. I already knew the shape of desperation when it turned slick. Josh did it instead. Inside, a single photo. Me walking into Elaine Turner's office. Printed in color. Blurry, zoomed from across the street. The message was obvious. We're watching. No note. No threats. Just the picture. Josh didn't speak. He just picked it up with salad tongs, dropped it into a plastic Ziploc, and filed it with the rest. The evidence folder was now 2 inches thick. We called Elaine. She listened without reaction, then said, I'll escalate. Surveillance means exposure, which means pressure. They're trying to force your hand. Don't let them. That night, I did something I hadn't done in years. I went back through every email, text thread, and voicemail I had from my parents going back 5 years. Patterns emerged. Mentions of favors. Of just hold on to this. Of can we store something in your garage for a few days? All the little asks that felt harmless at the time. One from last April stood out. Hey honey, your dad left a box by the workbench. Just some tools. Don't open it though. He packed it a certain way. It had stayed there for weeks. Until he picked it up. I'd never questioned it. I highlighted the message, screen captured it, and added it to the folder. Then I called Elaine. I think they've done this before. I just didn't see it. Her voice was even. People rarely do until it's too late. The next day, Josh changed every password on every account. Banking, insurance, even the thermostat. He bought a second safe for the house and moved all important documents into it. I deleted every photo of my parents from my phone. Later, while cleaning out the garage, I found an old shoebox marked Christmas lights. Inside was nothing but dust and a receipt for a prepaid storage unit 20 minutes away. The name on the rental was mine. I had never rented it. Josh and I drove there in silence. The front desk confirmed it. Yes, the unit was under my name. Yes, they had a photocopy of my ID on file. No, they had no video surveillance of who accessed it last month. The key still worked. Inside. Nothing but broken down furniture and 3 locked containers. One of them had my childhood initials etched on the side. That nearly broke me. Elaine had warned us. If you find anything, take pictures. Do not touch. Josh did exactly that. Then we called her from the parking lot. I think they've been staging a safety net, I said. A legal one. In my name. So if anything goes wrong, I'm the one holding the bag. Elaine was quiet for a beat. They're trying to erase themselves and leave you behind. Elaine moved faster than I expected. Within 24 hours, she had filed a precautionary affidavit with the local authorities and initiated a forensic audit through a private security firm she trusted. We weren't pressing charges yet, but the groundwork was being laid, brick by brick, silently. They'll blink first, she told us. Desperation always does. That week, Josh received an email from a burner account. No subject line. No greeting. Just 2 sentences. You think you're safe. You're not. Attached a PDF. It was a digital copy of a loan application, with my name, signature, and social security number. It was requesting a $50,000 personal loan. The bank's name was unfamiliar. The date of application? 3 weeks ago. We called the bank immediately. Elaine had warned us to move fast if anything financial happened. The representative on the other end of the line confirmed our fears. Yes, the application was received. Yes, all documentation appeared in order. No, the funds hadn't yet been disbursed. Pending final verification. Josh put the call on speaker and handed me a pen. Ask her who the verification call was scheduled with. Who was the call supposed to go to? The line paused, then the rep replied. It says here. Authorized agent, Janice Caldwell. My mother's maiden name. That was all we needed. Elaine filed an emergency injunction within 2 hours. The loan was frozen. The digital signature was compared to old tax forms, analyzed and flagged. Forgery. Not just manipulation now. Criminal activity. In my name. And that's when the shift happened. I stopped feeling violated. I started feeling dangerous. I sat at our kitchen table and looked at every legal document with a highlighter and a pencil. Every will. Every trust. Every co-signed account. I underlined every weak point they might try to slip through. Then I drafted a letter. Not to them, not even for the authorities. To my kids. It was labeled if anything happens. And I kept it in the new safe. I didn't want them to grow up thinking silence meant consent. Because this wasn't about inheritance. Or family property. Or respect. This was about self-preservation. And somewhere along the line, my parents had decided I was more useful erased than embraced. The private investigator Elaine brought in was named Glenn. He looked like he belonged in a hardware store. Khakis, windbreaker, haircut from 1998, but within a week he had uncovered things that made my chest ache. Bank transfers from my parents' accounts to a shell company registered in Nevada. That company then wired small amounts, under $10,000, to 2 different accounts under my name. I hadn't noticed because they landed in an old checking account I hadn't touched since grad school. Structuring, Glenn explained. It's how they avoid detection. Keep the numbers small, keep the IRS asleep. Josh sat beside me, fists clenched. And you're saying they're using her name to do it? Her name, Glenn said. Her identity. Her footprint. It was worse than I'd thought. They weren't just trying to frame me for a single mistake. They were building a history. A pattern. So that when things fell apart, the blame would trace back cleanly to me. Elaine filed paperwork to lock down every financial point of access. We put fraud alerts on all my credit reports, closed dormant accounts, changed logins, moved our assets into a trust with ironclad provisions, my name only. Josh suggested cameras. Not paranoia, just logic. We installed a full system with alerts. No more blind spots. 3 nights later, the motion detector went off at 3:12 a.m. Backyard. Near the garage. Josh bolted upright and grabbed his phone. One grainy image. A figure in a hoodie standing near the side fence. They didn't try the door. Didn't break in. They just stood there. Then left. We sent the footage to Glenn. An hour later he called. License plate picked up on the street cam 3 houses down. It's your uncle's Dodge Ram. That was when I felt it for the first time. Not grief, not panic, not even betrayal. Contempt. I had spent my whole life thinking love was a rope you didn't cut, no matter how frayed it got. But I wasn't hanging on to that rope anymore. I was using it to pull them closer, so they couldn't run when everything finally collapsed. Elaine called us at 6:43 a.m. on a Thursday. They're moving assets, she said. Fast. Sloppy. My parents had listed their home for sale, quietly off-market through a private broker. The same house I grew up in. The same one they swore they'd never leave. But now it was part of the unraveling. Elaine sent us a PDF of the listing agreement. It showed Janice Caldwell, my mother, as sole seller. My father's name was nowhere on it. That's because he's technically already transferred his portion, Elaine said. Remember the Delaware holding company? Josh ran both hands over his face. They're going to try and disappear. Glenn confirmed it later that afternoon. Plane tickets booked. 2 seats. One way. Destination Belize City. Departure this Sunday. I stood in the living room staring at the printout of the booking confirmation. I could see it so clearly. My parents sipping something cold in the sun, laughing about how close they came to losing it all. How they almost got caught. How they almost had to face consequences. I wasn't going to let that happen. Elaine advised restraint. We wait until they're at the airport, she said. We let the financial crimes unit serve the paperwork there. She paused. That moment. It's important. For the record. For the optics. For you. And she was right. I wanted them stopped mid-stride. Not in court. Not after the fact. In motion. Let them taste the illusion of escape before the fall. That weekend Josh and I drove to the lake, the same one we never made it to with the kids. We brought snacks. Watched them run across the sand, no idea how close we had come to losing everything that mattered. When we got back to the car I checked my phone. One new voicemail. It was my mother. Her voice calm, crisp, distant. We'll be out of town for a while. Please don't make this harder than it already is. She hung up without saying goodbye. I stared at the phone screen for a long time. Then I pressed save. Josh reached over and squeezed my hand. You okay? No, I said. But I'm ready. Sunday morning came with fog. We were parked 2 terminals away, windows cracked, coffee cooling between us. Elaine had arranged everything. Agents in plain clothes, the warrant signed, the federal paperwork filed. Josh kept glancing at his watch. 8:17 a.m. They're not going to show, he muttered. They will, I said. They need to feel untouchable first. At 8:29 Glenn radioed in. They're here. He texted us a photo seconds later. My parents, my mother in her navy trench, wheeling a suitcase with her usual exaggerated poise. My father trailing her, smaller somehow, thinner than I remembered. They moved like people boarding a cruise, not like 2 fugitives. Josh exhaled slowly. That's them. The agents didn't move right away. They waited until my parents passed security. Until they were 1 escalator away from the international terminal. Then they moved in. 2 men. Calm. Direct. Hands on shoulders. Badges flashed. From the angle of the photo Glenn sent, my mother looked surprised, but not scared. She knew. And worse, she knew I'd done it. That's what made her turn her head toward the camera as they led her away. She smiled. Not kindly. Not bitterly. She smiled the way someone does when they know the final page is still being written, and they're daring you to finish it. 3 weeks later, Elaine met us in her office with updates. Formal charges filed. Wire fraud. Identity theft. Attempted smuggling. 2 counts of endangerment tied to the children in the vehicle. They weren't going to prison for life. This wasn't a movie. But they weren't walking away either. My father was cooperating. My mother was not. She's still saying it was all a misunderstanding, Elaine said. Claims you overreacted. I smiled. Of course she does. Elaine leaned forward. You've done everything right. I need you to know that. But that wasn't what I needed. What I needed was to feel the air in my lungs again without second-guessing every memory. What I needed was the quiet. Josh and I took the kids to the lake again that weekend. No photos. No calls. Just silence like an open field after a storm. And somewhere between unpacking the cooler and watching our youngest skip rocks across the water, I let myself say it aloud for the first time. They tried to erase me. Josh looked up. But they forgot I write the ending.